Good morning. How are you doing? Anyone have fun plans for the weekend? Cool human fun plans? Elizabeth, do you have something?
Yeah, we're going to the like Pomona has like a lodge in Idlewild in the mountains. So we're going with the international students
Ooh,
for the
fun.
weekend. Yeah, I'm really excited.
That should be a nice little getaway this time of year, I imagine. Maybe a little bit
hmm
cold, but
Yeah, there's probably going to be snow, but I'm excited.
nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. We do not have very much snow around here in Utah this week. Such a shame. Okay. Well, the first thing I'm going to have you all do is a little icebreaker. Some of you have done it before, but you're going to need the stamp feature. So when I share my screen, there will be in the share screen bar, there's going to be a little button that says annotate, and you'll click on that, and then you'll select a shape, whatever shape suits your fancy today. And then you can stamp that shape on the screen. So this is to help you find that feature and also just as a little fun icebreaker today. So it's week 2 for CGU folks in the semester, and I'd like to know, how are you showing up today? What little meeple person in this image represents how you're feeling at the moment? And you'll just stamp on whichever number you feel like is where you're at today. So again, you'll find this, for those of you who are just joining, you'll go to the toolbar as I'm sharing my screen. There will be a little button called annotate. Click on annotate, and then I don't know if for you the sidebar comes up or if you can just select stamp, but if not, it's a little check mark icon for me. And then you'll select a shape and you can stamp which of these meeples you are feeling like represents you this morning. All right. Maybe I'll do it too. Yeah. Okay, so I'm seeing some enthusiastic left behind on shore. I'm seeing maybe some enthusiastic I'm alone on an island doing my thing. And your personal interpretations here should go in the chat as well. I think we can all agree that some of these are very up for interpretation. Someone's climbing a ladder, couple people, this was me and someone else, but kind of hanging on for dear life here. Ah, yes, thoughtful, pensive, looking toward the horizon, or whatever you interpreted this one. Out in front, oh yeah, pushing against the ship. Love my vomiting guy. I often pick that one. Some folks are feeling kind of sharky, kind of quirky sharky. I don't think I've seen many people select this destructive person here, but I'm gonna think about that in the future. Okay, so wherever you are right now, however you're showing up, I'm peeking at the chat. Oh, someone thought this maybe was jumping off the cliff. Is that what other folks are getting? Yep, yes. Okay, wherever you're at today, however you're showing up, we're gonna kick off class with a little activity. It is a creative activity. Both of the activities today are very generative. You're just gonna ideate, come up with a whole bunch of ideas. So I want you to give yourself permission to just like get in that headspace, and then you'll listen to a little lecture and we'll talk about the homework assignment. So find your creative zen this morning. Leave your maybe you're vomiting and jumping off a cliff behind you for a couple hours, and we'll see how we do together. Thanks for that. I'll probably make you do that again. The boat activity is one of my faves. Okay, so like I said, we're going to kick things off with an activity. And for some of you, this will be really familiar territory, and for others, this will be brand new territory. So I encourage you to just play, give yourself a little bit of grace if this is new to you. Once upon a time, this was a real business. Once upon a time, there was a business named Dinner. And Dinner was based in the UK, but it was a meal service where same day you jumped into the app, you selected whatever recipe, so like stir fry or something, and it would send you same day pre-measured ingredients so you could complete that recipe. And the idea is just sort of automating like kind of grocery delivery, but with a specific meal in mind. And they popped up in 2012. You may be very familiar with some of the meal delivery competitors like HelloFresh, Blue Apron, Home Chef, I think is one, some of those. So dinner popped up in 2012 and crashed in 2014, never to be heard from again. The business flopped, and I guess I'm giving you this case to sort of think about. I want you to generate, as a small group, I want you to generate as many reasons for why dinner might have failed as you can. Why did dinner fail? Why did dinner flop? When clearly there are lots of somewhat similar competitors that are doing very well in this space. And I want you to really go for it in terms of breadth, like all kinds of internal things, external things, right? Don't maybe get so specific that it's silly. You know, Chad was the software engineer and deployed a catastrophic update. So not so specific, but general things why dinner may have failed. And I'm just going to give you a blank Miro board. Part of this is going to help you, if you haven't yet used Miro, get a little bit familiar with Miro. So I'll put you into teams, and then you'll find, I'll show you the board actually. You'll find each team just has a whole wall of sticky notes. So just start generating. I'll give you 8 minutes and we'll see how far we get. And then we'll come back and discuss. Any questions on this? Let me drop the link in the chat while you're thinking of any questions, and then I'll assign breakouts. Okay, so there will be 7 teams. You'll find your corresponding wall of stickies, and I just opened the rooms. Have fun. Let the ideas flow.
We're back.
And you're back. Okay, how was that? Yeah, wakey, right? Brains are kind of working now a little bit, perhaps. I'm going to share my screen and take a peek at each team, so representatives from the team can just kind of unmute, chime in. But let's look at what you all came up with together. Okay, so here we are, team 1. If you're in the Miro, you can follow me, or you can look at your shared screen through Zoom to see what I'm seeing. Either way. And let's actually, yeah. Ooh, actually I want calm. Great. So I just want the music to play. Okay, well, that's happening. Okay, Jack, Kathy, and Elizabeth came up with a few things. So we have pricing, unclear branding, lack of consistency. So maybe not delivering what they say they're going to deliver on time, bad customer service, the food sucks, the recipes were too difficult, maybe the recipes weren't great for some other reason, too simple, not what people want to eat, lack of variety, maybe unprofessional packaging or presentation, not enough people heard of it, failed marketing, not accessible in terms of dietary restrictions, did not use a subscription, and ordering wasn't streamlined. Okay, so I'm seeing a few things here. Just pull these over. So we have a few things like customer service, pricing, brand. So I'm going to say recipes and food, something about internal, like not on time. If anyone wants to unpack that one for me, feel free. Dietary restrictions, something about like the subscription. Okay, so I've got these kind of rough categories. When you say, oh, lack of consistency deliveries, are you saying like the food deliveries, correct?
Yeah, I think what we had in mind was just like if somebody had ordered something, I don't know, earlier in the day and it was supposed to come at night, maybe it came in the morning or the next day, you know?
Totally. I'm gonna like put, yeah, this somewhere between bad customer service and like ordering problems in general. Okay, love it. Team 2, let's have a look at what you came up with. So shipping and delivery, not incorporating customer feedback, limited range of recipes not offered in different like languages or measurements or customization. So that could also be maybe dietary things, I imagine. The app was hard to use, the food sucked, competition kind of outperformed them, lack of personalization. When you say quality control, are you thinking food there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Poor advertising, low brand awareness, poor packaging, no loyalty program, funding ran out. So real. Delivery range was geographically restricted. Good. and then required kitchen appliances, and not everyone had. Ooh, I love it. So just pulling those stickies over here. I think we have shipping and delivery, not incorporating customer feedback, limited range of recipes, the food sucked, lack of personalization. Are you thinking recipes there?
I think it was a better word could have been customization, like
And
too cookie cutter.
like of the foods, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think kind of putting that with dietary restrictions. Hard to use app, something over here. Funding ran out. Quality, put that next to like food was not good. Customization, competition, brand awareness. I think this is sort of in the vicinity of this. And then something about shipping and delivery with the geographic restrictions. Okay, so you'll see I'm starting to like create some groups. So as I'm going through, I want to kind of read everybody's out loud, but as I'm going through, like feel free to help me categorize if something is really obviously in one group. So I'm gonna read through team 3. Ian, Megan, and Serena? No. Who was that? Not Mark. Malia, making me guess. Okay, let's see what you had. So, the market, competitors, someone knew a little bit about HelloFresh. Very cool. Maybe just like ordering groceries online was still early adoption phase. You're right. I mean, this was over 10 years ago. No market research. Ooh, we are high level thinkers here. Shoppers' interest wasn't aligned with the buyer's interest. So am I hearing like the folks who were ordering weren't? Tell me a little bit about this.
So basically, when you go grocery shopping for these fresh ingredients, sometime you're looking for more raw products or you're looking for more ripe products, and it comes out different from what you expect because usually you just get it from a picture that's like curated to look really pretty, and you get like a really ripe banana and you're just like, actually, I didn't want this.
Yes. Okay. Has anyone ever ordered groceries or like been the recipient of groceries ordered for them, and like who was picking these avocados? Or like, yeah, something like that. Totally. Any thoughts on that? Great. Competition was faster, recipes not great, lack of resources for products. So if they ran out, grocery shopping habits, untrustworthy produce. Customers may prefer buying produce in bulk. Yeah, I wonder if that's like more of a pricing thing. Produce and service delivered more costly. So yeah, pricing, pre-measured ingredients might make things run very slowly. Yes. Also take the time to prepare the meal. Did other teams have this one? Like, I'm not just selecting it, like you're also telling me to cook it. Maybe the instructions weren't clear. Maybe it was expensive. People like shopping in the early morning for fresh food. Yeah, got to get those unbruised bananas. I'd rather order fast food. Yeah, like maybe I just wanted Taco Bell. Don't judge me. Too expensive. I don't feel like eating those recipes. Walking and grocery shopping is therapeutic. How many people like grocery shopping? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Me too. Yeah. Mostly because I do it in the middle of the workday. So it's like, if I work, let me go shopping now. And maybe the app was confusing to use. Okay, team 3. I'm going to pull these stickies over and I want you to kind of help me divvy these out. So maybe not the greatest. I think within this grouping, I'm starting to see some subgroups. So something about like variety, difficulty, or inability to, actually like kitchen appliances, and maybe difficulty might hang together. Instructions were unclear. Product ran out. Quality. Great. And then I think this is like its own thing. Competitions over here. And oh yeah, another key competition. Okay, let's move along. Marketing fallacy. Tell me about that, Team 4.
That was basically like
not maybe targeting a lot of platforms for marketing, or not using appropriate catchphrases for marketing. Like
Hmm.
basically overall, all generalized in one term. That was the idea.
Yep. So some kind of marketing failure.
Yep.
Limited purchasing options, not a grocery shopping app, rising cost of food ingredients. Oh, that's so right now though. Quality of the delivery process, diversity of meals and ingredients, maybe not providing enough options for different cultures, lack of creativity, name limits, what app can be used for. Oh, I see. Dinner only. What about lunch? What about breakfast? Quality of product, logistics, not enough employees. Totally. Market analysis and research, strong competitors. Okay, I'm gonna bring your stickies kind of over to the side here. And I think folks can start categorizing a little bit. So pull those into any group. And if someone wants to judge this big group into subgroups, I welcome it. Team 5, logistics. Waste. Ooh, tell me about waste.
Well, we were thinking about how each individual ingredient has to have its own package. And so like I've ordered from Blue Apron before, and I remember my family like didn't like it anymore because like each like spice had its own little like Ziploc and stuff too. So it's just like a lot of extra money probably goes into that. And like they also like put ice packs in it when there's like meat. So it was just like, yeah, probably expensive with that too.
Yeah, so like all this packaging, that waste. I also imagine what came to mind for me was like we're pre-measuring out ingredients, but what happens when like you have a bag of flour and you're divvying it to several customers, but then we have some left over? Like where does that go? And is that just waste in terms of like company profit loss, something like that? Photo, squash looked disgusting. Yeah, so maybe branding and messaging and just visual appeal. Scalability, price, the delta for delivery and eating out. Am I understanding like the difference between getting
Yeah.
something delivered from a price perspective?
Yeah, Franklin pointed out that like you're paying for a delivery, you're essentially paying the same amount that you would if you just ate out to cook your own food.
Right. So maybe we're just not delivering the value people are seeking. Competition, delivery service doesn't actually solve a problem in the market. Excessive plastic. Yep. Price for customers. People aren't hungry. Who eats dinner anymore? I like that you're thinking creatively. Paying employees. And then the generic name of the company, like, are people going to associate dinner with no E with this service? Great. Your stickies, oops, what have I done, please? There we go. Your stickies are over here. Find the groups. Team 6, meal options don't fit customers, funding issues for the company. I love that you all are thinking big. Fresh produce waste, okay, what we were talking about, right? Bad app or website experience, the quality of the produce, yes, yes. The market for the need or the service didn't exist. Problems with same-day delivery, location, price of meals. All of those are really straightforward to me, and I think map to some of the things the other teams have put together. So yeah, jump in and organize those. Team 7, final team. I'm just gonna copy these. High consumer operational or logistic fees. Yeah. Long delivery times, took too long to assemble the ingredients, not enough employees to deliver things, competitors had a better deal, insufficient starting capital, again, thinking big here. Meals were repetitive, yeah, poor marketing, wrong audience, two very important problems. Maybe it started in a rural area and there wasn't enough buy-in, or maybe it started in a big city where like I could just walk down the street to the grocery. Website, platform, poor usability, niche user base, maybe low product market fit, and then legal issues. I love that you're thinking about that. Bravo. So maybe the folks assembling these ingredients all need to have food handlers permits. And like, what does that look like? Great. Okay, how are our groups shaping up? Thank you for assigning some titles to these groups. That's precisely what I'd like. So folks are talking about the quality of the actual food, the quality of the recipes, or the variety, something about if we had just changed the food, everything would have worked. We're also talking about pricing and value. So really great thing to think about. Maybe it was like $40 to order something, and that is just too much. Competition, marketing, ads, wrong match, poor branding. Maybe they just didn't do enough marketing. Maybe just no one found out about them. Platform usability. So the app was hard to use. The website was hard to use. Something about waste in terms of either food or the packaging materials. And then we have a lot related to logistics. So this was kind of like getting those deliveries delivered on time with the right stuff of the right quality. And I'm also just gonna say like people don't want it. People don't want to. People enjoy grocery shopping or people enjoy eating out. So they'd rather do that. Okay, great. Anything come up for anyone while we were going through this that didn't get captured?
Well, this kind of has to do with marketing, I guess, but I tried like me and Sean were trying to look up the name of the company and I just like looked up like dinner food delivery platform and obviously like what came up was just like Uber Eats, like DoorDash, like all of the HelloFresh. So like the name I think really like is a problem for them because it's probably hard to find.
Yeah, that could have been the case. To someone's point about the time and competing products, I think at this time there were a lot of services popping up. I'm not sure how saturated the UK was with different things, but back in, 2012 to 2014, a lot of these services were just starting to get traction across the world. So if you have a generic name like dinner and you're not showing up at the top of your Google search results, that could be a huge challenge. Whereas something like Blue Apron, you might have a better chance at ranking in those search results. Nick, other comments?
Yeah, I don't know if maybe we did cover it, but I was just thinking like it ties into what you're saying too. It's like the name also having companies like really like just imagine Walmart's your person you're trying to work with, right? In terms of getting your product. Like back then, I guess not back then, like 2012, this is like an emerging market, right? So they're gonna try and they have the leverage on their side, right? In terms of because they have the product. So how much money could you really make? Like you need drivers and then you need the companies that are giving you product to make money as well. So like how would that even work? Like I don't know. Like what would be the economics like you need to be a certain size in order to make money, right? I don't know.
Yes. Oh, I love that you're talking about that. And some folks started tapping into that same idea, which is just profit margins. Like dinner has to survive based on whatever money they generate, which means they need to charge quite a premium on these services because we have shipping and delivery. We have what Nick is saying, like they inevitably have partnered with grocery stores. So what does that look like? All of these people need money. So the consumer is going to be paying a premium for this service and maybe the profit margin just wasn't there. Great. Okay. So I like that you're thinking about all of these different levels. And I want you to sort of think about some of these broader strokes like product market fit and even like marketing and advertising, search. Then we have all the way down to things like I couldn't use the app or my food wasn't delivered on time. And I like to think about all of those different types of problems you can have as existing at different altitudes. Like there's this macro problem and then mid problems, micro problems. And they also like to think about problems in terms of, is it internal? Is it a problem happening at dinner? Did Chad, the software engineer, deploy the bad thing or whatever? Like, is that a problem internally? But then there are all these external market forces. There are all these external things, legal, policy, logistics and supply chain, all of that stuff could be impacting dinner as well. And this is a good segue, if you'll follow me back. This is a good segue into the lecture. So if you recall last time, we were talking about a double diamond, and we even kind of elevated our thinking to something a little bit less linear, a little bit more cyclical, a little bit more iterative. But going back to the simple double diamond, we have the problem space and we have the solution space. So what are we trying to solve in the world? What problems exist? What value can we deliver? And then how are we going to deliver that value? What are we going to build to serve the needs of people? So you see how some of the problems you just generated with dinner map to each of these spaces and kind of follow this spectrum of big problem space, like people don't want it. People like going to the grocery store. People don't want to make food. They want food to arrive. Those product market fit level things. But then you also talked about things like, I couldn't use the app. I couldn't find dinner in search. Maybe I couldn't view all the recipes very easily, or I couldn't filter them by my dietary restrictions. Really tactical problems. And both of these things can honestly, all these spectrum, across the spectrum, all of these problems can take down a product, take down a feature, take down a business. So all of them are really important areas to address. So we've got this high altitude of like the problem space, but if we zoom into the solution space, so let's imagine that they had product market fit. They were advertising and marketing. They paid Google a lot of money to put their search on top. They had a lot of funds to begin with. Let's imagine all of those all those boxes were checked. As we start to get more tactical, you'll find that we start to think more about the actual solution and the usability and other UX factors in that solution. And that's where I want you to absorb the UX honeycomb. So if you haven't seen this one before, these are factors in a user experience that need to be satisfied for something to really be successful. So we talk a lot about, in the problem space, we talk a lot about like, it's valuable. Someone would pay money for the service that you're providing. But there are some of these other factors as well. It needs to be useful. It needs to be desirable. People need to want to engage with this service. Sometimes desirability, anything that conflicts with a person's identity or value set. So when we started talking about like packaging, even if that service seems good, it becomes undesirable because it doesn't align with people's values. Or sometimes there's like a solution out in the world, like an app to help you, but maybe you don't want to admit that you need that kind of help. Can you maybe, I don't know, if you can think of examples, drop them in the chat, but something where people are kind of embarrassed that they use that service or they use that product. That desirability factor, that's a huge thing to overcome as a business. It needs to be accessible to a wide variety of people or the people you're targeting, whoever they are. They need to be able to get to it, to access it, to use it in the way that their environment or context or ability level allows. It also needs to be credible, trustworthy. So it very well could be that you download the dinner app and it looks kind of 1998 and it's just sketchy. It's not credible. It looks like a scam. Maybe the website where you sign up for the service originally kind of looks scammy. Have you ever clicked on an ad or tried to found a product very interesting? I'm just going to think like social media ads is really common, right? Like you click on a product that looks really interesting. The last Instagram purchase I made was this like steampunk, think Lego kit, but with nuts and bolts and like metal and light bulbs and stuff. So Lego kit that takes a long time. And it was like this steampunk spider. Okay, I'm getting really specific, but like I wanted that thing for someone in my life, needed to build that thing. So I clicked on it and the website looked okay. It was a little clunky, so I had to sit there and dig and make sure that that business was credible and not just gonna take my money. It all worked out. I'll have to send pics of the spider. But if you find something you like and it doesn't seem credible, that can undermine your entire experience. It doesn't matter if there's product market fit if something isn't credible. Findable, we talked a little bit about that. I can find dinner when I'm Googling it. Even within the experience, I can find the recipes I'm looking for. I can find the buttons to check out. And then in UX, we talk a lot about usability. And this whole class, you know, half the title is usability testing. So you can actually use the app. It's intuitive. So all of these boxes need to be checked. In this case, hexes. All these hexes need to be checked for this to be a successful venture, whether it's a feature, an app, a physical product, a digital experience, piece of software, an entire service, omni-channel experience with a website and an app and some hardware and everything in between, right? All of these boxes need to be checked. I wanted to tell you about the UX honeycomb because I can't tell you how often I reference this in terms of I'm coming into a new project. Some of you who work in my lab, you're going to be entering into some new landscape and you need to start assessing, what are they asking you to evaluate? Are they asking you to evaluate whether something's usable, desirable, credible, all of the above, valuable? So think about these when you're putting on your science hat and you're really thinking about like, what am I measuring? What is the success outcome that I'm trying to optimize? Thoughts, comments, questions on the UX honeycomb? Anyone seen this before or some version of it? Like 2 of you, I'm honored. Ta-da, UX honeycomb. Isn't this nice? Yeah, just like print this sucker out, right? Or like list it somewhere and reference it. So usability, we're going to zoom in on the next slide. We were thinking about like double diamond, and now we're UX honeycomb, and now I'm going to zoom into usability. But I want you to remember that usability is just one hex in the honeycomb. And I also like this. This is from, I believe this is from the Lean Product Playbook by Dan Olson, but I could be misattributing this. But the idea is utility plus usability equals usefulness. Utility being like the functionality. So how it functions and whether you can use that function is usefulness. So I kind of like that too. Zooming into usability a little bit here. So for something to be usable, we can get even more granular. We can take a magnifying glass to this construct. And again, like kind of putting your science hat on, how do we measure usability? What does usability mean? What does it mean when something isn't usable? So breaking this down a little bit, we have things like effectiveness. Can I complete my goal with a high level of accuracy? I try to do a thing and I do it and it's pretty accurate. Is it efficient? Can I do it fast? Sometimes things are usable, but they're not fast. And the user, the human's tolerance for speed, they drop off before they can actually complete whatever goal. Engagement. Is it pleasant? Is it gratifying? Do I want to be using it? Error tolerance is another factor. So am I capable of making a catastrophic error as a user that I can't recover from? If you've ever been on a website and you're filling out some kind of form, and maybe let's just say it asks for your birthday and there's a text field and you enter in your birthday and then you click submit and then it's like error, your birthday is not in the right format. And it's like, why did you let me put it in that way then? Like, how come you're not helping me? If you wanted it in a particular format, why didn't you give me some kind of clue that I needed to be putting it in that format? Or the worst, right? A form tells you error or like cannot submit and it doesn't tell you why. It's the worst. So that tolerance for error and that error recovery, when I do make an error, you need to make it really easy for me to get back to where I belong. Oh, ones that don't save your input. Yes, preach, Serena. Yeah. So I have to, I don't know, I leave the tab open and then I come back and everything's gone. It's like, you should be accounting for that. The system should be helping the user not make that catastrophic error. And finally, is it easy to learn? Many of you will find Figma is not very easy to learn, or you'll find other tools in the world are not very easy to learn. Sometimes we have to learn certain apps or software. We're kind of a captive audience, right? So if I'm using a tool for my job, I'm thinking about like Workday and other things you all might have to use for to like input your hours or something. And if the tool sucks, you're just a captive audience. You have to just learn it because it's for your job. But as consumers, sometimes we don't. have to. Like if I'm not doing my taxes or something that I have to complete, if it was just like, am I gonna purchase that steampunk spider buildy kit? Am I? If that was a difficult thing to learn, then I'm out, right? Like I have no tolerance for learning in that environment. I should just click, add to cart, check out, enter by payment information and be done. So I wanted to put this bug in your brain, plant a little seed. Usability will come up more and more, but it's such a fundamental pillar of UX. And oftentimes user experience research is conflated with just usability testing. Some UX researchers only do usability testing. But remember, we have the whole honeycomb. Wow, remember all of it right now. But we have the honeycomb, so there are other things besides usability. You should always be pushing, like, do you want me to test whether that's usable? Do you want me to test whether that's useful or valuable? Nick, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I just had a question in terms of so is this like this would be a part of like the experimental aspect of it? Oh, okay. All right, cool.
That's right.
Because I have a big interest in experimental psychology, so like this is the whole thing. Okay. All right, got it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we designed something, and that's what y'all are going to do the first half of this course. You're going to be in design world, but then we're going to evaluate those designs with research findings in an experimental fashion. And these are the underlying constructs that we're going to be tapping into, especially usability. Other thoughts or comments? My last thought for you is this is kind of a like, I don't know, a moment where you're all going to get into your career, whatever that career is. And if you work for something like a tech company, but even like nonprofit organizations, if you're working on digital experiences at all, you're going to find that the world has trained you to think in this way. You're going to discover the problem, and then you're going to create the solution to solve the problem. So this is like the happy path in our mind. I find out that people want a meal delivery service, same day delivery of groceries so they can complete a recipe. I create the app and it solves the problem. But on the ground, boots on the ground, day to day, go to work, do a project, add a feature, redesign a button, it looks a lot more like this. So each arrow here kind of represents a feature, a design change, some project that the business is pursuing. Maybe they want an additional app, or maybe they want to build some other new product, right? And each of these arrows takes a certain amount of time and energy and resources. For the business to be successful, the average of all these arrows just needs to kind of get to solve the user problem, the average of all the arrows. But on the day-to-day, you're going to find arrows like this one, or you're going to find arrows like this one, where you do an entire project and it doesn't actually move the business toward solving the user's problem. And I just tell you that now because as you're exploring like your final project, this might come up, but really out there in the greater world, you're going to have to figure out ways of weathering the storm a little bit and focusing on this longer arc of year over year, are we getting closer to solving the problem? Because this week, or next week, or this month, you might actually be here. And that's going to feel really awful. So I would encourage you to just be thinking about like the business just is following the big arrow. And all the little arrows, they roll up to that big arrow. But day to day, you might be caught in one of these arrows that isn't quite pointing in the right direction. And there's a time to tolerate that, and there's a time to not tolerate that. And to decide, like, as a business, we are not moving toward the path. We are not solving the user's problem. I've been on there are too many arrows pointing in the wrong direction. This has been my life for 2 years. I'm out. So, food for thought. And yes, to Sean's point, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, etc. But I think it's even on the ground. Sometimes you do an entire project that's like, well, that had the opposite outcome than we hoped. But it doesn't mean that in aggregate, you're not making progress. And this is why in tech, especially, we get the mantra of fail faster. Like just kind of get to the next arrow. Because if you walk backwards, it's like, okay, well, then we walked backwards for that arrow. on to the next arrow. Hopefully that arrow is really gonna cancel out. The average of the two is gonna look pretty good. Okay, last thought, and then I'll let you on a break. As a researcher, not that fast. As a researcher, your role is just to mitigate risk. So your role is just to reduce the number of arrows that are pointing in the wrong direction. But sometimes there's going to be noise. There are going to be arrows that point not quite in the right direction. So I'm just kind of handing you that nugget here. As a designer, your goal is to try to produce things, again, arrows pointing towards solving that problem, which inevitably makes the business successful. But you won't win them all, and that's okay. The system is built for some of those arrows to be in reverse. And with that, you can take a break. Let's take 10. So I have 10:05 on my 10:06 now on my clock. So let's come back at 10:16. Come back. How should we stall for 2 minutes? Is anyone keeping up on this AI stuff? Like DeepSeek and yeah. If not, I'm Serena.
I have it. I downloaded it. I already deleted ChatGPT from my phone, but I haven't used it that in depth. Like I haven't played with it yet.
Yeah.
But like, less water being used.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Hugging Face is a company upon which DeepSeek is built, and they are much more environmentally and resource conscious than the practices to support previous models. So just an interesting thing. And each of these models has like their unique little systemic bias problems. So that was like the headlines this morning that I was reading, all of the ways DeepSeek is biased. Nick, oh, you're on mute.
Sorry. One interesting fact that I learned in one of my AI classes was that the fastest growing app ever was ChatGPT. That it only took 5 days to like reach over 1 million users. So I was like, oh man, it's pretty crazy.
Oh yeah, unheard of growth previously. I think it took Facebook like a year or something to get that many users on their platform. Jack?
Yeah, I saw some irony in it because I don't know if I heard ChatGPT was like maybe they suffered, like some of their users were stolen or they were complaining. I'm not sure which, but ChatGPT is just trained off of a bunch of work and stuff that people put out there and didn't consent to ChatGPT learning off of.
Oh yeah.
And I think DeepSeek has kind of done the same to ChatGPT and just trained it off of that. It's just everyone's stealing each other's work.
It's very ironic. And
Yeah.
ChatGPT is threatened because DeepSeek is open source, and the way the time it took to train the model and the resources it took to train the model actually devalue the company OpenAI by a lot. And NVIDIA is also freaking out.
Yeah.
So it is wild, wild west out there.
It is. Yeah. NVIDIA is like, I don't really pay attention to the stock market much, but I heard about NVIDIA's stock. That is
historic drop.
Yeah. Wild.
Amazing.
Good. Their graphics cards are too expensive.
Yeah. Folks, we're gonna just like watch it all happen together.
The biggest problem was the CEO making the statement or I think the whole pitch was you can't make AI without our chip, period.
Right.
And then he got proven wrong. So don't ever say you can't or never.
Especially with tech moving this fast. Very funny. Okay, well, we're gonna have a whole UX lunch on that one of these days. But thanks for playing and effectively stalling for your peers. Back to our world and the world of big arrows and small arrows. In this course in particular, the problems we're solving are the small arrows. So instead of thinking build the right thing, we're thinking build the thing right. So for most of your assignments and your projects, we're going to assume the big arrow is right. We're going to assume there's a real problem in the world that our solution is solving. We're out of the problem space. We're thinking about the implementation, the solution space. How do we best deliver value to those people, and assuming that there is value to be delivered there. So I think that's why these backwards arrows are so important in this course, because every little project you do here, you could find different things and your final project could go, haywire, but we're going to assume the big arrows on the right path for the purpose of this class. Okay, so thinking about the types of problems to solve and how we're going to solve those problems, I wanted to continue covering some of these key UX principles in case they're new to you, and make sure you have a little bit of a lay of the land here. And I can't talk about UX without talking about design thinking. If you read the pre-reading from the Interaction Design Foundation, that PDF I sent out, and it's linked in Canvas, it talks a little bit about design thinking as a way to solve problems. And design thinking was actually kind of pioneered back in the late 1960s by a cognitive psychologist. And after that, lots of people kind of jumped on this vague skeleton of a framework that this cognitive scientist Herbert Simon put forward. And it really became popular when David Kelly started calling things design thinking with these steps in the late 90s and early 2000s. David Kelly is like, well, he was the founder of the big design firm IDEO, and he also taught at Stanford's D School, design school. So he was a big kind of influencer as UX was evolving in the late 90s and early 2000s. So lots of people like follow David Kelly, just like they follow Don Norman and Jacob Nelson. And these are old pillar people in the field. So David Kelly puts forward design thinking as it's defined here, which is to solve problems, we take these steps. And this is the creative problem solution space. So we empathize to actually understand the user, and we need to shift from self-referential thinking. All of you with psychology backgrounds are going to enjoy the discomfort that this process brings. It's not about you, it's about someone else and someone else's version of truth. So whatever that truth is, the user and their experience is the center of this design process. Then we need to define the assumptions, define the problem, and actually challenge the assumptions we have about the problem as it exists. So sometimes we know that there's a problem in the world. People who are allergic to cats can't cuddle cats. Big problem in the world. But we need to challenge our assumptions about that problem. Does everyone who's allergic to cats want to cuddle cats? Or are we just making that assumption? We could go on and on, but we really need to like break out of our thinking about how we conceive the problem. We then ideate. I say then, but this really isn't a linear process. These are kind of modes you're in when you're design thinking. So ideate is a mode. You want to identify alternative solutions or approaches that might not otherwise be apparent. So one way to solve this allergic to cats but want to cuddle a cat problem is to actually genetically modify my DNA so that I'm not allergic to cats. That's an out-of-the-box solution, right? No one was maybe thinking about that as a first pass solution. But when we ideate, we want to generate lots of different solutions. And this is how we break out of the type of thinking that we had previously been tied to based on what exists today. The classic example of this is Uber and Lyft and how they disrupted the entire transportation industry. When these types of rideshare services came on the market, people laughed. Investors laughed. You're going to have people get in strangers' cars and strangers are going to drive strangers around. Hilarious. But it worked. So these kind of sometimes wild ideation, out of the box thinking can be the right solution. Then we want to prototype. So prototyping is about spending as little energy as you can to generate a solution, to figure out whether it's going to work or not work, good or bad, usable, not usable, desirable or not. So it's not about making this beautiful conceptual thing. It's more about what's the minimum you can create to say, okay, yes, this is going to work or this isn't going to work. And alongside prototype, we test. So evaluating those prototypes with experimentation. And these are the different hats you wear as you're doing this design thinking process. In the pre-read that I offered to you, the Interaction Design Foundation talks about design thinking as the opposite of the scientific method. So in the scientific method, we talk about systematically moving through collecting empirical data, developing a hypothesis, designing a test to evaluate that hypothesis, and drawing a conclusion. And the whole idea is cause and effect relationships. So we want to get as close to causal as we can as we're testing things. And one of the reasons why design thinking took off is because design thinking helps us solve more complex problems that have unknown unknowns. So we don't know what we don't know out there about the problem. And we need to explore the problem to figure those things out. Whereas the scientific method is really good about taking, okay, we don't know this thing. It's really clear what we don't know. And then we're going to systematically test that in a linear fashion. It will come as no surprise to most of you who know me that I don't like this dichotomy whatsoever. Both of these frameworks belong in UX and should be leveraged alongside each other. And you can't really just do one and have a good, reliably good result. I also kind of think about it like this. I don't know if you see what I did here, but I just kind of like in each mode of design thinking, you can get really experimental with the scientific method. In each stage of the scientific method, you can put on your design thinking hat. So I just don't see them as this or that, black or white. I see this as like one of 100 frameworks that are out there that you're going to use in different contexts and flexibly apply different principles from. So just my 2 cents. But these are 2 paradigms we're going to be using to solve problems in this class. So I wanted you to be really familiar with design thinking, and then most of you are pretty familiar with the scientific method. So we'll be doing both. And I'll remind you, our big questions for this course, what we're trying to solve here together, is applying scientific method, applying design thinking to design with research, inform our designs with research, and then put on our researcher hat and do research that can actually positively impact designs. So this is how this all comes together. Okay, so that's kind of that topic. I'm glad some folks are agreeing with me in the chat. Feels validating, but you don't have to agree with me either. Seek out other perspectives, of course, as always. Let's think about some design examples. So in the chapter you read, you started getting your feet wet with some of these cognitive principles in design, and we're going to continue down that path in the next course. But I just wanted to start thinking about one thing related to how the human brain works and designing with humans in mind. And that thing is called mental models. Before I get into mental models, though, I want to talk about remotes for grandparents. Does anybody know what I'm saying when I say remotes for grandparents? There was a big internet fad like years ago of people posting pictures like this, and these are remotes for grandparents. I definitely fall into the category of grandparent here. I hate most remotes. TV remotes frustrate me to no end. And especially in the dark, like, what are we doing here? Why can't I find the back button? Oh my gosh, it can be so infuriating. And I'm always in the dark because, I'm watching my shows. So remotes, they are a great example of something that's designed with a lot of utility, all kinds of use cases in remotes. You're going to punch in a channel, you're going to change the input, you're going to do this, that, and the other thing. My remote has a Netflix button and a Disney Plus button, but no other streaming service specific buttons. It's very strange. They paid for those spots, but remotes can be too much. And we actually need to constrain things a little bit so that folks can actually use these solutions. They can access the utility. The utility plus the usability, right, equals value, equals usability. So just thinking about grandparent remotes a little bit. I bring this up because when we're talking about mental models, we're talking about mental shortcuts that our brains use to help us intuit or expect how something's going to function. So what do I mean? You move through the world and there are all kinds of physical objects around you. And each of those physical objects evokes something. Here's my giant mug we all love that eclipses my face when I drink out of it. And this has a handle. From my learned experience, I know that like this is where I grab the mug, especially when this stuff is very hot. So that's like my learned experience. Maybe this is so intuitive that I don't really have to learn this very well. I'm just gonna grab that handle the very first time I interact with a mug in my life, and then I learned that that worked out great. So it forms a mental model. And these are shortcuts that our brain uses to help us get from all of these perceptual things that we're experiencing every day to those expectations of how to interact with that thing. You see a doorknob, it's round, you know it probably twists. You see all of these different things in your world and you know that they're probably going to act a certain way. And it's frustrating when they don't. When our mental models break, it causes us a little bit of pain, if you will. So it's how we think about a system is our mental model. What we think we know, how we expect it to behave. And not only do we have all of these experiences in the physical world, but all of us are also trained in the digital space, which I'll talk about too. One example of designing with a mental model in mind, I think Mercedes was the first one to do this, but you're in the car and you need to adjust your seat. And rather than having a set of, let's say, like buttons with labels, right? You could have head and I don't know, back, right? You have all these labels and then buttons that go this way and that way. And lots of cars have this sort of model. But what Mercedes did was leverage our concept of a chair and then map buttons to this physical thing we all know about, chairs. And we can kind of intuit that each part is going to move whatever part of my chair. So this is a clever design of leveraging people's mental models to make something more intuitive, to use those mental shortcuts kind of to our advantage. More familiar leveraging of mental models are these. So first, the shopping cart. The shopping cart icon comes from a physical shopping cart, right? And we know that we put things in the cart and that's how we take it to pay for it. And that translated to an online setting. And now we all associate a shopping cart icon with put things in there and then check out and pay for them. The save icon, for those of you who have interacted with 3.5-inch floppy disks, the save icon was a physical thing that you, like a physical disk that you put things on. And that's why we have the save icon we do. But there are some things that don't have necessarily physical analogies, but that are so entrenched in you from your learning of digital worlds that you don't even really know that they're mental shortcuts until I explain. So for example, if you see a circular button versus if you see a square button, you know, if you see a whole bunch of circular buttons that you can only select one of them. And if you see a bunch of square buttons, you can select multiple. This is a way the digital space has trained you. You also know that if you see a toggle switch, there are two modes, on and off, enabled, disabled, and you're toggling between the two. So you have this is sort of a physical analogy too. We have switches and such, but you kind of have this pattern in your head from interacting with digital experiences. More abstract, you have these patterns in your head, especially hamburger and kebab or meatballs. So if you didn't know, that's what these are called: the hamburger menu, the kebab menu, and the meatballs menu. We are very clever in tech. So the hamburger menu was designed when we were translating things from desktop to mobile for the first time, and we realized we had very limited space and everything has a menu. So the hamburger menu was born and everyone learned it, and it was a widely adopted pattern, design pattern that everyone just sort of learned, adopted, and now is used today. every time you see these 3 lines, especially if they're somewhere like up in a corner, you're going to think that there's a menu under there. So that's one thing. Kebab and meatballs, similar thing. You see these buttons next to things a lot, and you know there's more stuff in there. So these are patterns, and there's so many patterns, common patterns that you have learned throughout your life interacting with digital experiences that should be leveraged in a lot of contexts. Why reinvent the wheel? Let's not replace the hamburger menu with a star, because most people aren't going to know that a star up in the corner is a menu. They're not going to click on it expecting a menu to pop out. They might actually click it expecting that I'm going to favorite something or save something to a wish list, right? That's kind of the pattern we have for stars and hearts. And they're either full or not full. So you break a pattern, you're going to lose these mental models. You're going to lose these mental shortcuts. So in design, we're often trying to find ways to take mental models and leverage them for intuitive design. Everyone's starving for kebabs and meatballs and hamburgers now. So our activity here is there's a time to break the rules. And let's focus on the hamburger menu. Whoops, wow. I'm just not scrolling today. Let's focus on the hamburger menu. I want you to come up with examples of when you might choose to use a less conventional pattern for a menu. When might you decide, imagine it's on a mobile device. When might you decide not to use a hamburger menu icon? And I'm gonna let you think through this with a partner or two and just try to generate, I'm giving you walls of stickies again, but just try to generate situations where you might break that pattern. And you can get kind of wild with this. I allow wild. If you get stuck, if specific examples is starting to hit a wall, what are some general things that might signal to you that you should break conventions? You can kind of think about that. So whether it's the hamburger menu or something else, like what are some characteristics of a project or a context where you might decide we're going to break patterns, break tradition? So I'm going to drop this Miro board in this case, in the chat and assign you some new breakouts, give you another 8 minutes and let you hash this out. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions before we go? Right. Okay, those rooms are open. Have a good time. All righty. A harder activity, I know. I put it later in class. Ideas flow a little slower with this one, but you all started coming up with some really great things. I want to review some of them. So again, you can follow me in Miro, or I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so team 1, minimal app resources. All of the info needs to be readily accessible at all times. So discoverability, findability of different items. There's too many options in the hamburger menu. The design style doesn't lend itself to a hamburger menu. The number of options could dictate whether you opt for like a kebab instead of a hamburger menu. An audience who uses different mental models or patterns. Many of you came up with this one too, like some kind of special population, cultural difference, language difference, etc. Speed and efficiency. And then we wouldn't want to pull in this pattern that's traditionally mobile for desktop. Love that. Team 1, if you'll pull your sticky notes over, I started some categories and I'd love for you to like refine those categories and place your stickies. Dismiss. Team 2, if there are only a few links, hiding them under a button could be impractical. I love that you came up with this one. How many of you have ever found a hamburger menu, you click on it and it's 2 things, right? It happens. I feel like those are the same hamburger menus that are on desktop. And it's like, oh, we needed a hamburger menu to say, contact us versus homepage or something. Yes, I'm seeing nods. Good one. Lack of visibility to important links. Okay, team 1 had that one too. Difficulty navigating users with assistive devices. Yes. Breaking conventions can be useful if there's more like immediate or intuitive way to accomplish the task. Yeah, so instead of just using the common pattern, you might say like, is there an unconventional pattern that's actually gonna work better here? Too many subcategories, never-ending scrolling on the page. Mentions older folks. Yep, totally. If things in the menu link to too many external websites, great. And a small hamburger menu icon can be hard to notice on a large screen size. So again, yes. I call that, when we're talking about different device sizes, and like physical dimensions and types. So a tablet versus a phone versus a desktop versus a virtual reality setup. All of these things, we call these different form factors. So depending on the form factor, it might not make sense to have something. Stylized cursor. Tell me about that. Like if my cursor is a cute little thing.
Ugh. Yeah, I was thinking, like on Figma, I noticed that they had like a different cursor on the homepage.
Oh, yes.
It's like a different aesthetic, I feel. So
Yes, lots of sacrificing in the name of brand. And Figma does this a lot because they know that designers are on their page. So they get really funny about it sometimes, where they will break conventions. I think for one of their conferences one year, so Config is the big Figma conference, and I think they had a landing page that had a hamburger menu up in the corner, but it wasn't clickable or something like that. I mean, it was just like something really silly, and it's because it's they know their audience. I love that you're talking about using actual text instead of icons. I once designed an interface for an elderly population on a mobile device, and we replaced the hamburger menu icon with the word menu because folks had a lot better mapping with the word menu. Less clicking, more hovering. Yes, again, if we're on desktop or something. Content-centric design, unique logos. Yeah, so we might have like some kind of special way we want to signify menu. Great. Feel free to take those stickies over as well. Smaller interfaces. Yeah, a different pattern, like a nav bar at the bottom on mobile. Very common conventional thing. Maybe we don't need a hamburger icon. Maybe we don't need a hamburger menu. I love that some of you are asking that question. Over in the groups, I call that box checking. Sometimes we start designing and we just put a hamburger menu icon in the corner as if it needs to be there. We don't think about what will be under it. Replace it with search. Use the setting icon, the gear. Minimal or too much information in the app. Love it. Similar horizontal pattern background. Way to think outside the box. Yeah, what if your whole background is lines, horizontal lines? Your hamburger menu is not going to pop in that situation. And then other special populations who might not resonate with hamburger menu icon. Culturally applicable. Things more complex in design programs, yes. Demographics, applicable actions, cultural character choice, design and creative spaces, yes. Accessibility, new technologies, totally. Sometimes when you have a brand new technology, you're going to break convention on purpose because you know everyone's going to be learning anyway. And there's a really good pattern for what you're doing. Intuitive to audience. Tell me about this, Neuralink.
I think the arrow was a mistake, but I mentioned Neuralink because we might need unconventional mental models, or we might find different ones with the new technology, because like you could be communicating, you could be interacting with an app in real time, like in just like in space, just with yourself.
Yeah, like what if everything just goes to voice because now our LLM bot friends are so good at natural language processing. So now everything's voice commands. We don't need a hamburger menu anymore. We might have some other kind of way of handling things. Great. Aesthetic, space, people who aren't as tech literate, too many tabs plus a hamburger menu. Maybe you actually really need to rethink what's happening. Not being able to tap a hamburger menu that's too small. So I once worked with some designers who, long story short, the users were out in the field and wearing big gloves. So although the gloves allowed them, like their company issued gloves allowed them to interact with their tablets, tapping smaller buttons was not great. So we had to make all the buttons really big. So like things like a hamburger menu icon might just be too small in that situation. Cultural things, less content hiding. I love that you're all thinking about that too. Just maybe we want things front and center. Maybe we don't want to hide things behind a menu. Video games, yes, this space breaks convention all the time on purpose, and it's actually a great space to look at for things like that. Readily available, commonly used. We only have a few menu items. If you're driving a car, don't give me another click. Just put it right in the UI. Virtual reality, people with cognitive or motor impairments, speed of input, yes. Streaming platforms, yeah. Maybe you want a different approach altogether. Great. I know folks are organizing things over here. I love that you're thinking about essentially we want to lean in, right? We want to lean into these mental models. We want to leverage people's cognition and their schemas, these ideas they have about how the world works. We want to leverage that. That's how we create intuitive design. That's usually how we speed up the process of getting through something in design, is we're leveraging a lot of historical knowledge and intuition via these mental models. But there is always a time to break convention. So I want you to be, have a disposition to be using what came before you, because it comes with a lot of perks. Don't reinvent the wheel unless you have to reinvent the wheel, and then go ahead and do that. So that is kind of the philosophy here. Any thoughts as you're seeing some of these categories and such? Form factor, box checking, don't do conventions just cause. Cultural, special populations, maybe there's a technical feasibility thing. Yeah, team 5, those were good. Great. Okay, well, you don't need to categorize. I give you permission to walk away there. I want to come back to just the key point here is when it comes to whether design is successful, it's always context dependent, always. So one design could serve some population very well, and in a different population, different context, it could be completely unsuccessful. Gauri, did you have a point?
I actually have a question.
Mhm.
So, what if we are conducting user research and we are looking at what function users want? And for example, they say that they want some specific, like they want A, but they they know that they want A, but they don't know that they want B, but they actually do want B. I don't know how to explain this. But
Yes.
how do you identify the B then? Because this is obvious, but this is not.
Yeah. A few approaches to the problem that Gauri just laid out beautifully, which is very common. Sometimes users don't know when something isn't working. So the hamburger menu icon is a great example. If you put that in a design, no one's probably going to flag it. No one's going to tell you that that's a bad practice. The users are just going to see it. They're familiar with it. They're going to tap on it, what have you. But no one's going to tell you that's a bad practice when you're doing user research, because everyone's so familiar with that pattern. So this is where the ideation piece of design thinking combined with empathize and really understanding the problem and the user, that's where it's up to you as the expert to generate a bunch of possibilities. And then sometimes we come in and we test those possibilities against each other. So putting on our science hat, imagine I have actually designed something with the hamburger menu, and I've designed something else without it. And we want to know which design is better. So 10 people get this design, 10 people get that design, and we're comparing those two outcomes. And we find that people with the hamburger menu icon actually take on average 20 seconds longer to log in than people without. If that's what we care about, then we might choose to scrap the hamburger menu icon, even if users didn't say that that's what they wanted, or even if users found it and were able to use it as intended. We may be looking more at behavioral outcomes or comparing two things and the difference between those two things. So that's what I'll say for now. But as we move through the course, the usability testing section of this course, we're going to get really deep into what's an attitude, what's a behavior, when do you take one over the other, and how do you actually measure some of these tricky constructs like usability? How do you measure whether something is more usable or less usable than something else? And to Sean's point in the chat, sometimes users just like pretty things, just like new things, even if they're horribly not usable. I can't tell you how many hundreds of people I've watched navigate some very pretty experience or some very interesting experience and fail the task I asked. Try to log in, but you know, there's a dog on the screen and it's barking at my cursor and it's cute. So I'm having a really good time, but I didn't actually complete the task of logging in. So users might tell you, it was awesome, I loved it, but they couldn't actually do what they set out to do. And it's our job to disentangle that mess. Other thoughts before I tell you about your homework assignment? Well, thanks for sharing and thanks for participating in these activities. I think you had some good thoughts here today. I want to keep digging as we move through the course. Homework 2. Your homework 1s are looking great. Started reading some of the feedback you provided each other. Great. I'll be providing feedback for everybody, of course. Do y'all want that public or do you want that private? I mean, I always incline my feedback goes to you privately, but do y'all want that public?
I would be cool with a public roasting for mine.
You know I don't roast. I give you specific advice.
I don't mind being roasted publicly either.
Okay. I think I'll err on the side of private for my feedback. But I see how sometimes like when you see someone else's thing and then you see the feedback, sometimes things click, but we'll move forward with I'll just grade and quiet feedback to each of you and you can take it or leave it. Okay. So homework 2, which will also be graded privately. Homework 2, you're going to create some designs in Figma. Some of you are so comfortable in this space. Some of you, this is brand new territory. So what you're going to do is find an experience, find a website or a mobile app, find a couple of them because you're going to need a couple things for this course. And then you're going to take that experience and you're going to reproduce it using new components. And I'll show you exactly what that means. So you're going to take 2 workflows from whatever experience you choose. And they can each be from a different experience. So you might do like a banking app for one and a veterinary app for another. Cool. Doesn't matter to me, but 2 workflows. Needs to be at least 2 screens to be a workflow because a workflow is about moving through a set of actions to accomplish some goal. A login flow, a create a new whatever flow, create an account flow. These are all examples of flows. So 2 to maybe 5 screens, although some of you who are really comfortable might want to go, 6, 7 screens, that roll up to a single. And then you're going to create the screens in Figma using other components while staying as true to the UX as possible. What do you mean, Dani? The UX is the structure. So we talked about UX versus UI, and I kind of gave you that analogy of like UX is the skeleton and UI is the skin or the clothes on the person. But UX is the structure. So this is a wireframe that represents the UX processes. So like you see this is some kind of text, this is some kind of image, text, image, toggle, button. You all know what these things are, but this is a low fidelity thing, and it's just demonstrating the structure. The UI is the skin, the look and feel, the actual button, the actual icon. And what I have here for you is LinkedIn. So here's a screenshot of my LinkedIn, and here is someone's reskinning of LinkedIn. So most of you are going to be, you're going to take an experience that exists in the world. Don't use LinkedIn. Don't use top tech companies in general. Is my recommendation in the assignment description. But you're going to recreate it using existing components. So I'm going to have a place for the profile picture to go. I'm going to have the name, first, the title. These all map. At the bottom, the navigation is actually different. So this is where they broke the UX. I don't want you to break the UX. I want you to just replicate the UX of something that exists. Why, Dani? This is weird. There are things called design systems. So when you jump into Figma, I talked about the Figma community a little bit, but when you jump into Figma, you don't usually start with a blank canvas. You usually start with something. And each of the major companies and many of the smaller companies in the world have design systems that they use of like, this is how we style our buttons. This is how we style our toggles. This is what a drop-down menu looks like. And I've just listed some really well-known design systems that are publicly available. I've listed them here on this slide and also in the assignment description. So like, here's a website, and this is Google's Material Design. This is their design system. And you can read a little bit about it and such, but when you look at the components, it's like, okay, this is what a button looks like. All the different types of buttons. This is how Google does buttons. And lots of companies adopt these publicly available design systems. So lots of companies do buttons this way, because this is how Google does buttons. So in the Figma community, you'll find UI kits. And look, there's an entire kit that is material designed by Google. If you go into Figma, open this Figma file, you'll find the design system. And this is what I want you to start with. I want you to start with a bunch of kits and existing design systems. And I want you, not avatars, that's getting too much. Let's stick with buttons. And I want you to use these to recreate the screens that you decide whatever experience it is. So I'll show you an example, but these components are going to be available to you, and you're just going to replicate, reproduce whatever experience it is. If it's LinkedIn, for example, and this was the kit that I was using, then here's what my new design would look like. Let me show you in Canvas an example. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay.
All right. Can I ask you a question, Professor?
Sure.
I just want to probably try and see if I understand it correctly. So take whatever's on the left of your previous screen and then just use it, create it in either Figma or that other space using UX, the UX design.
Right. And so you're going to take components that exist in the Figma community kits, and you're going to, reproduce some screen. Let me show you an example. This one's not a very good example because this student actually created custom everything. So what I don't expect, so she took screenshots of Banfield, the Banfield app, which is like pet hospital stuff, and she recreated components. Like she drew all of these components to really match one for one. You'll notice like the font's a little bit different, and like certain things are just like a little tiny bit different. And that's because she made one from scratch. So I can actually click on, these are components. This isn't a screenshot. So she recreated the experience using components. I don't need you to be this specific. I don't need you to recreate each little button. I want you to use existing things. So I want you to just find that like Google Material Design button and drop it in here. So they can look very different, but the UX, the structure has to be the same. I want an image, a logo, a button, a button, a button, clickable text, a weird banner, and a navigation bar at the bottom. So you'll give me the screenshots, and then you'll give me your version below. And I'll spoiler this, your components and everything that you're using, you're replicating this assignment, but you're actually going to make improvements on these designs in the next assignment. So I'm giving you the ability to like make all the things, and then you're going to like decide how to optimize that design in a later assignment. And some steps and tips I give you. So like, what's the goal here? I'm trying to get you familiar with Figma. I'm trying to get you familiar with components and design systems. If this is very comfortable territory for you, I challenge you to keep your file organized. Ha, ha, ha. You'll just like get, a couple bonus points if you're able to do this. And I know this is your third or whatever UX class, but keep your file organized. And I give you a little link to a 2-minute, 3-minute YouTube video on organizing your Figma file. So there's your challenge. But for those of you who are new to this, select a couple websites that are interesting to you. Think about your career trajectory. Think about industries that you like. Think about causes you're passionate about. And I give you a whole bunch of things to think about, like medical, healthcare, fitness, wellness, pharmacy, financial assistance, homelessness, affordable housing, LGBTQ. Like, pick your interests. Go find websites and mobile apps doing these things. If this doesn't float your boat, look, the top industries employing UX professionals are these. So go pick some small business in these categories. Then you'll select a workflow, log in, set up, create a thing. Let's go back to this. So she did login flow, and then she did a banking app, and this is make a transfer. So there's a workflow. You can pick a couple workflows, recreate them. All the key elements need to be in there. If you can't find an existing pattern or an existing button or whatever you need, you can create it from scratch and then supply the screenshots. I need the Figma URL and a PDF or an image. Why? Because if I just get a PDF from you, I don't know if these are both screenshots, if you're that particular, but like in this Figma file, I know that she actually drew the triangles. I give you a couple examples. Here are all the design systems. So you'll have to look in the Figma community for various design systems, but this is a good place to start. And then you'll turn this thing in. Questions? Great. Okay, this should be a fun one. You're just gonna be in the Figma zone for a couple, 2 to 3 hours. Put on your favorite music, replicate a screen.
I have a question. Is it only limited to mobile apps or could it be desktop apps as well?
I actually think it'd be easier to do websites. So I encourage folks who are not so familiar in Figma, maybe try websites instead of mobile apps, but you can do either one. Hannah?
I'm interested in doing the healthcare app I already used. This is just oh, you can't really see it, just kidding. It's a healthcare app and I use this for work and the UX is like decent. Is this a good example for me to use?
Yes.
It'll show like
decent is exactly where I want you to be.
just kidding, you still can't see it. But basically it'll show like we create, so I have these screenshots and I basically replicate it using whatever tools in Figma as best as I can, but I can also have the option to make it better.
Yeah,
to
in the next
my
assignment.
okay.
Yes. So don't make any changes in this assignment. You're just reproducing the screen with components. And then in the next assignment, we'll talk about how to make it better based on
Thank
best
you.
practices. Yes. But a decent design. Don't go for Netflix or Spotify or whatever, because you're gonna have a really hard time improving Netflix and Spotify and whatever, right? So I know, not true. That is fair point, actually. But you know, pick with your future in mind.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to let folks go. If you have any other questions, stick around and I will answer them.